All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into some territory that might feel a little, well, counterintuitive. We're drawing insights from a fascinating chapter called The Importance of Saying No. It's from the book The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fig.
Right.
Think of this as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding some surprising ideas about freedom, relationships, and what it really takes to build a life that feels genuinely meaningful.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to pull out the core arguments from this specific chapter. We're going to look at a personal journey, someone chasing absolute freedom only to find, meaning and commitment instead.
Okay.
And we'll explore some pretty stark cultural differences in communication too, like how bluntness, surprisingly, can actually build trust.
Interesting.
And then dig into that central idea why saying no, both to others and crucially to yourself, is absolutely essential for healthy relationships, for trust, even for shaping your own identity.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The author starts with his own story.
Yeah, he does. He spent about, 5 years traveling the world like a digital nomad?
Visited 55 countries, I think, chasing this idea of just boundless freedom.
And, initially that sounds incredible, doesn't it? Selling everything, bouncing around,
Cool.
meeting people, having all these experiences. He mentions it was partly curiosity, adventure, but he also admits, there was maybe a bit of past commitment issues mixed in there.
Like, why settle for one thing when you could try everything?
Exactly. The ultimate FOMO basically turned into a lifestyle.
But he found something unexpected, didn't he, in all that globe-trotting?
He did. He said, while he had these incredible, character-defining moments, the overall experience felt both profound and surprisingly meaningless. At the same time.
Which is such a paradox.
That's the key insight, yeah. From that period, after years of it, he actually settled down, got married, bought a house, has an electric bill, the whole deal.
Stuff he probably wouldn't have thought was very glamorous before.
Right. But the big lesson landed. Absolute freedom, just on its own, actually provides nothing in terms of meaning.
Wow. That feels completely backwards. We always think more options, more freedom. That equals more happiness.
But he realized freedom is just the opportunity for meaning. You have to actively choose something, give it importance.
Which means you have to reject other things.
By definition, yeah. Meaning comes from actually narrowing your freedom through commitment, not expanding it endlessly.
He really had to kind of overdose on the freedom to get that.
Seems like it. Visiting country number 53, 54, he saw that the excitement wore off. It lacked the lasting significance compared to, say, his friends back home who were building lives.
Committing to people causes work.
Yeah, well, he felt like he was just kind of floating from one high to the next.
And this whole idea that rejection is essential, that led him to a really vivid experience.
In Russia, right. St. Petersburg in 2011.
That's the one. He describes it as initially just sucking. The weather, the food, his apartment.
People seemed rude, didn't smile. Yeah, all of that, and yet somehow it became one of his favorite trips ever.
How does that happen?
Well, it connects right back to this core theme. He ran into this level of bluntness, this unfiltered communication he just wasn't used to.
Like, no fake smiles, no polite chit-chat, just to be nice.
Exactly. If something was stupid, people just told you it was stupid. If someone liked you, they might just say so, right away.
He tells a story about a coffee date. Where the woman called something he said stupid within minutes.
Yeah. And coming from, a Western culture where that's seen as super offensive, his first reaction was just insecurity.
I can imagine.
But as he spent more time there, he started seeing it differently. Not as rudeness, but as honesty, just raw honesty. Communication without a sales pitch, without trying to get something, without desperately needing to be liked.
So in this environment that seemed kind of harsh, he felt liberated.
Yeah, a strange kind of liberation, a freedom to actually say what he thought and felt without that constant worry about offending someone or being rejected himself.
So freedom found through facing rejection, not avoiding it.
Precisely. And he shares this interesting theory from his Russian teacher about why it's like that there. Basically, having lived under systems with limited economic opportunity and maybe a culture of fear, trust wasn't something you could easily buy or fake.
So trust became the most valuable thing.
The ultimate currency, yeah. To know who you could actually rely on, you needed absolute honesty, even if it was uncomfortable. Trust was almost about survival.
Okay, so contrast that with the free West.
Where, according to this theory, there's abundant economic opportunities. So presenting yourself well, being likable, making connections, even if it's not totally authentic, that can be more valuable, economically speaking, than deep, genuine trust.
Appearances, salesmanship, networking, superficially.
Right. Knowing lots of people loosely seems maybe more advantageous than knowing a few people really, really well.
So the side effect is
Yeah.
we learn to fake it more.
That's the perspective, yeah. It becomes normal to smile when you don't feel like it, tell white lies, pretend to like people or things. The economic system kind of inadvertently rewards that social performance.
And the downside.
A kind of pervasive distrust, maybe, even in close relationships, because everyone's kind of adjusting their personality to be more likable or marketable.
Which loops us right back to that core paradox. Rejection isn't actually bad. It's something that makes life better.
Exactly. The source argues that our modern culture, consumerism, positive thinking, it pushes us towards just accepting everything, saying yes all the time.
But if you don't reject anything, you don't really stand for anything, do you?
Pretty much. If nothing is genuinely better or more desirable than anything else, then you don't have values. You don't have an identity.
Avoiding rejection feels good temporarily, but leaves you adrift.
Rudderless, yeah.
Yeah.
In the long run.
So to truly appreciate something, to give it meaning, you have to limit yourself to it.
Right. The depth you find in a career or a craft or a relationship, that often comes from years, decades even, of focused investment.
Which means actively saying no to countless other paths, other people.
Along the way, yeah. Choosing a value necessarily involves rejecting the alternatives. If you value your marriage, you reject things that threaten it. If you value honest friends, you reject gossip or backstabbing.
But healthy decisions are built on rejection.
It's inherent. If you truly value X, you must reject non-X. It's not just a consequence of having values, it's part of maintaining them, defining who you are.
So if we're always avoiding saying no because we're scared of being rejected ourselves, we kind of erase our own identity.
That's the argument. And this desire to avoid rejection, conflict, confrontation, this urge to just accept everything, the source frames it as a subtle form of entitlement.
Entitlement. How so?
Like feeling you deserve to feel good all the time, so you avoid anything that might rock the boat or make someone uncomfortable, which leads to a life just chasing pleasure and superficial approval.
The author's pretty blunt about it. He says rejection is a life skill we're often terrible at.
Yeah. People stay in bad jobs, unhappy relationships, precisely because they can't stomach saying no or facing someone else's no.
We want honesty, but actually having it means being okay with giving and receiving that difficult word.
Which takes us right into relationships, doesn't it?
It does. And the chapter uses Romeo and Juliet, surprisingly, to critique some of our cultural ideas about love.
Yeah, he calls them absolutely out of their fucking minds, suggests Shakespeare maybe meant it as a commentary on the madness of that kind of passion, not a love story to aim for.
That's a hot take. I mean, for most of history, marriage was more practical, right?
Yeah.
Stability, family stuff.
Totally. This modern ideal of dramatic, consuming, like action movie love is relatively new, and the author argues it feels a lot like chasing a drug high.
He points out it stimulates similar brain parts as cocaine. Intense romantic love.
Yeah. Incredible highs, sure, but it can create as many problems as it solves. That constant drama we sometimes romanticize, that's often not healthy love, is maybe that entitlement playing out again, seeking constant emotional highs.
Okay, so what is the difference then between healthy and unhealthy love, according to this perspective?
Unhealthy love is basically two people using each other as an escape, a distraction from their own problems.
Okay.
While healthy love, that's two people acknowledging and actively addressing their own problems, but choosing to do it with the other person's support.
So your partner isn't the solution to your problems.
No. They're your teammate while you work on your own stuff, your personal growth journey.
And the key difference comes down to responsibility and rejection.
Those two things, yeah. How well each person takes responsibility for their own life, their own feelings, and their willingness to both give and receive rejection from their partner, honestly.
The source says that wherever a relationship is toxic, you'll find blurry boundaries and an inability to handle rejection.
Makes sense. Healthy relationships need clear lines. You know who's responsible for what their values, their feelings, their problems.
And blurry boundaries look like?
Yeah.
What? Taking on someone else's problems?
Yeah, like I have to fix them. Or expecting someone else to fix yours. You made me feel bad, no, you fix it.
Or even that jealous partner saying, you can't go out, you know how I get.
Exactly. Or blaming your parents for your life choices decades later. It's all blurring who is responsible for what.
And entitled people often fall into two traps here: the victim and the saver.
That's the dynamic described. The victim expects others to solve their problems, thinking vulnerability earns love.
While the saver takes on too much responsibility for others' problems, thinking that's how they'll get love or validation, by fixing people.
Right. And both strategies are really about avoiding the discomfort of accepting responsibility for their own emotional state and life choices.
Which creates these fragile, kind of artificial connections, based on avoiding conflict rather than real appreciation.
Yeah, and this isn't just romance. It applies to family, friendships.
Yeah.
The overbearing parent who solves every problem, they foster entitlement in their kids.
Because if responsibility is always fuzzy like that, you never develop your own strong value.
Right. Your main value just becomes making the other person happy or needing them to make you happy, which is dependency, basically, bound to collapse eventually.
Because nobody can actually solve your problems for you.
And they shouldn't try. It won't lead to lasting happiness.
Yeah.
And you can't solve theirs either for the same reason.
So the healthy dynamic is both people working on their own issues, but choosing to do it alongside each other, supporting each other's efforts.
Exactly. Healthy boundaries aren't about being cold. It just means support comes from choice and shared values, not obligation, fear, or entitlement.
Okay, let's look closer at that victim and saver dynamic. Sounds intense.
It really can be. The victim expects rescue, believes vulnerability should equal love. The saver swoops in, takes the blame, thinks fixing the partner will make them feel loved.
And they're drawn to each other.
Often powerfully, yeah. Maybe recreating old family patterns without realizing it. But they tragically fail to meet each other's real needs.
How so?
The victim creates chaos to get attention. The saver fixes the chaos to feel worthy. It's actually quite selfish on both sides, a conditional cycle. Rarely allows for genuine, unconditional love.
Because if the victim truly loved the saver, they'd say, what?
Something like, look, this is my problem, I need your support, but I have to fix this myself.
And if the saver truly loved the victim,
They'd say, hey, you're blaming others here. You need to take responsibility and deal with this yourself.
wow, those statements sound kind of harsh, but you're saying they're actually acts of profound love.
And respect, yeah. Encouraging growth, responsibility, owning your own stuff.
It's almost ironic then that entitled people might find emotionally healthy people boring.
Apparently, because healthy people have solid boundaries. There isn't that constant drama, those emotional highs and lows the victim-saver dynamic thrives on.
Taking responsibility is scary for the victim.
Because they've relied on blaming others.
And stopping the fixing is scary for the saver.
Because their whole sense of worth is tied up in being needed, in fixing things.
So a good test for a relationship is how it handles no.
That's a key litmus test proposed. How would things change if you just said no to a request or an expectation?
If saying no leads to a massive fight or emotional manipulation,
Then that relationship is likely conditional, built on shaky ground, superficial benefits, not unconditional acceptance of each other as separate people.
people with strong boundaries,
Yeah.
they are afraid of disagreements or hurt feelings sometimes.
They accept it's unreasonable to expect everyone to cater to their every need.
Yeah.
And they know they can't control how others feel or react.
Healthy relationships are about supporting each other's individual journeys, not trying to manage each other's emotions.
Yeah, it's not about caring about all the same things your partner cares about. It's about caring about your partner, regardless of the specific things they care about.
That's unconditional love.
Yeah.
And it requires being okay with having different values, different boundaries.
Which brings us neatly to trust.
Right. And the source makes a really strong point here. Without conflict, there can be no real trust.
Yeah, he uses a simple example. Your spouse asks how they look before going out. The cliche is, you lie to make them feel good.
But the author argues, honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, is more crucial for trust long term.
More crucial than just constant placating, yeah. He says his wife is the last person he should censor himself with, and thankfully she can handle it and calls him out too.
It might sting a bit in the moment.
But that honesty, that willingness to risk discomfort, actually makes the relationship stronger, makes them both better people, arguably.
So if your top priority is always making yourself or your partner feel good right now,
paradoxically, nobody ends up feeling genuinely good or secure in the long run. The relationship erodes.
conflict isn't just normal then, it's necessary.
Necessary for maintaining trust, developing real intimacy. It shows who's there unconditionally, willing to work through stuff, versus who's just there for the easy parts.
Nobody truly trusts a yes man.
Right.
Or someone who just smooths everything over constantly.
Exactly. If people close to you can't openly hash things out, The relationship becomes based on manipulation, hidden resentments. It's not real.
Without trust, love feels conditional. Like it could vanish if you stop being the right version of yourself.
Which is why something like cheating is so utterly devastating.
It's not just about the sex.
No, it's the complete destruction of trust, and rebuilding that, incredibly difficult.
The source notes that people who cheat often give superficial apologies because they haven't actually dealt with the underlying values that led them to do it.
Right. The author argues if someone cheats, it's because something else was more important to them in that moment or that period, validation, impulse, whatever. Their values weren't aligned with their commitment.
So if they can't even admit those values, I think that's his term that led to it.
Then they lack the self-awareness needed to actually change, to fix the core problem. There's no basis for rebuilding trust then.
So to rebuild trust, the person who broke it has to do two things.
According to this, yes. First, they have to be willing to name and own the true, maybe ugly, values that caused the breach. Like, in that situation, I valued my own immediate gratification over my commitment to you. Something that raw and honest. If they can't articulate that, show they get why it happened, then no real foundation for trust exists.
And second, words aren't enough, right?
Definitely not. Regaining trust requires a consistent track record, changed behavior built over time.
And it takes way longer to rebuild trust than to destroy it.
Much, much longer. And that rebuilding period is going to be tough for both people. Both partners have to consciously choose to go through that struggle together.
He uses that analogy of the China plate.
Yeah, powerful one. Break it once, maybe you can glue it back carefully. Break it again, harder, more pieces. Keep breaking it. It shatters into dust. Irreparable. Trust is like that.
Okay, so wrapping all this up, what does it mean for you listening right now?
Well, it circled right back to where the author started. His journey from chasing boundless freedom to finding this unexpected liberation in commitment.
Consumer culture tells us more is always better. More money, more experiences, more stuff.
But more is often not better. We see this with the paradox of choice, right? Too many options can actually make us less happy with whatever we choose.
Because we're always second-guessing, wondering about the path not taken.
Exactly. Deciding between two apartments, manageable. Deciding between 28. That can lead to years of anxiety. This fear of making the wrong choice keeps us miserable.
And that anxiety is why many people, like the author, maybe in his early travels, avoid making firm choices at all. Try to keep all options open.
Thinking it offers freedom, yeah.
But investing deeply in one thing, a person, a skill, a place, that means saying no to the breadth of experience.
But constantly chasing breadth denies you the richness and rewards of depth. Some of the most profound experiences, the real growth, only come from sticking with something or someone for years, even decades.
He also realized, maybe in his 30s, that the real opportunity, the real wealth in life comes from that depth.
Yeah, when you pursue breadth, the returns diminish pretty quickly. The first few countries you visit might transform you. The 50th probably adds less new perspective.
Same for chasing fleeting jobs or superficial relationships or just more stuff.
Right, so his shift was intentional. He chose to commit deeply.
Rejecting most people to focus on real friendships, rejecting distractions for his work, committing to one person.
And in rejecting all those alternatives, all those distractions, he found something counterintuitive.
Genuine freedom, expanded opportunity within the commitment.
Exactly. By choosing what truly mattered and saying no to everything else, he focused his energy. It created depth, a meaning he never found chasing endless breadth.
Commitment gives you freedom because you're no longer scattered, pulled in a million directions.
Right. It hones your focus on what's actually efficient, beneficial for your long-term well-being. It simplifies decisions. It gets rid of that constant low-grade FOMO because you know you've chosen what's valuable to you.
It lets you focus intently, achieve more, maybe find more fulfillment.
That's the idea. The real liberation, according to this deep dive, comes not from saying yes to everything, but from that intentional, often difficult act of saying no.
Saying no to what doesn't align with your deepest values. Rejecting the pursuit of endless breadth.
In favor of committing to depth.
Breadth might be necessary when you're young, figuring things out, exploring.
Sure, but depth is where the real gold is buried. And you have to commit, you have to stay and dig it up.
So this deep dive has taken us through some pretty interesting territory. The unexpected power in saying no.
The necessity of rejection for identity, for values.
The critical role of boundaries, discomfort, even conflict in building real trust.
And ultimately, yeah, that surprising freedom that can actually blossom from deep commitment.
What's really fascinating here is how it flips conventional wisdom on its head.
Totally. The things we're often taught to fear or avoid conflicts, saying no, rejection itself, they're presented here not as obstacles.
but as fundamental building blocks for living a life aligned with your values, for building a strong identity, for creating genuinely meaningful connections.
So maybe here's a thought to sit with as you go about your week. If true freedom, true depth, comes from committing to what really matters, and commitment requires actively rejecting alternatives.
Then what are you intentionally choosing to say no to right now in order to go deeper into the things you value most in your own life?